How much story should we try and tell for our D&D or TTRPG characters? Well, the short answer is less for a one-shot, more for a campaign. Well, yeah, of course it is. But let us look closer. We like characters who progress and grow throughout an adventure, but in a one-shot or mini adventure, there just isn't time to make changes feel meaningful. In a long-form campaign, setting up these shifts without feeling like we're pre-writing our character's plot is a whole different challenge. So what do? How can we make cool character arcs without railroading ourselves? And what the hell's is a character arc anyway? My name's Rich, this is Renegade Rolls, and let's be storytellers together with our friends. An arc is just another name for a part of the story. Usually there'll be a main arc, the sort of main quest if you will, accompanied by small arcs weaving in and out of the story. The games I like to play are focused on the characters and how they overcome, or sometimes don't overcome, the forces against them. This means that the characters' arcs are tightly intertwined with the main story. Arcs are the story of something changing in some way, and they often follow a structure. A common one goes something like this. It'll begin with a setup of what normal looks like, and then an inciting incident. There'll be an obstacle, there'll be a twist, we'll get to a low point for a character or the climax, and then we have the resolution. An important thing to remember is that change is only meaningful if normal is well established. It's why films and books often start with a slice of life, an ordinary day for a character. These will be scenes where we get to know the characters going about their regular routines before the main events of the plot kick in. In a movie, these sections might last for the first 10-15 minutes. In a book, it could be the first couple of chapters. But sooner or later, something will happen. That inciting incident, that call to action, that forces the characters out of their regular routine and on with the story, whatever it might be. Unlike in scripted media, our tales around a table are much less dense in terms of how much plot we can fit into any length of time. You know that montage section at the beginning of Up? That's written and arranged in such a way that every single frame is conveying so much meaning. It shows a story of a life only partially lived in just a few minutes. I definitely wasn't crying in the cinema. No, I just thought it'd be a fun place to chop onions. The point is, even the best role players can't create a setup that quickly. Change is only meaningful if the normal is well established. If an average game session is 4 hours long, including all the usual pillars of play, social, exploration, combat, and snack breaks, of course, we're looking at 1 hour of playtime for the social side of the game, very roughly. If there's 4 players, that's 15 minutes of time spent in the spotlight per session. In one shot, this is going to be tricky, but not impossible. Let's look at the different lengths of game you might find yourself playing, and what we could do for each. In a one shot, the story arc can only really usefully be the party achieving their goal. If you want to do something for a single player character, I'd recommend saying, well, they're starting something. These sort of first hints, these green shoots of a new behaviour. They'd often fail or fall back into their old ways. A one-shot is likely to be the place where that character's normal behaviour will be seen. If you're a GM, I'd recommend starting in media res, in the thick of things. Normal behaviour for your group of adventurers is probably adventuring. You can start off the action in the middle of the dungeon or the middle of the dogfight in space. Whatever your genre says, be in the thick of it as you begin. For a one-shot, the easiest thing to do will be to pick just one section of the story arc and really make it your own. You can actually skip lots of parts of a full arc and maybe just tell the climax of the tale. Or maybe the start of your session is the climax to their story arc, but then you show the resolution, how they've grown into their power and they're a competent adventurer for the rest of the game. If you're playing in a 3-shot, a 3-part game over the course of a couple of weeks, I'd recommend the character showing a little progress in changing who they are, because the first session is likely to be taken up by, well, here's their normal behaviour. And again, we want to make these changes meaningful. In a 3-shot short adventure style, you could show 2 parts of the story next to each other. You could have the obstacles they face, and at the end, you have the climax. Remembering though that the characters' obstacles, what they're going through for their personal journey, that might not be the same as what the rest of the party is going through. If you're playing a 10-session campaign, a 10-session chapter and something longer, well, then you really can show a change. You can spend the first couple of sessions with that normal behaviour, but then show how that character is moving towards something new. Chances are by sessions 8 or 9, when you're in the thick of things, when the grand climax of the main arc is coming up, your character should be coming to the end of their arc as well. If you know that you're playing an epic game over the course of many sessions, well, you have time for lots of story arcs. The character at the beginning of the campaign is almost certainly not going to be who they are at the end, and everything could be different for them, depending how circumstances have affected them. If you're playing this properly long-form style of game, the challenge is not to rush. There'll be multiple stories going on, and you can wait for it. It's okay if your character doesn't change at all for the first 10, 20, 50 sessions. For a one-shot to a three-shot, well, everything kind of happens at once. You want to be establishing that normal behaviour quickly, and then showing how they can change a little. For longer campaigns, you can delay starting something, or start in the middle of something, so that the arcs are out of sync for different characters. You might find that this arc that you've set up for your character, after a while, it might just not be for you. In some cases, when thinking about your character's arc, you might get so far through it and then realise, no, this isn't what they want to do. They're not looking to make this change. Your character could just nope out of this and say, I don't want to be better at this thing. I don't want this personal journey at all. And that's fine, as long as you're on the lookout for more inciting incidents that might move them into a different direction. In a long campaign, pace yourself. Your character's story could be even more satisfying if it's a slow burn. In a long sandbox campaign, allow some time after you've finished one arc before picking up a new personal ambition, a new way that you'd like them to grow. If your character's just been through a thing, it's fun then to take a back seat and then try and help the other characters to achieve some of their goals. Chances are there'll be more than enough going on in the world to engage with. Chances are you've been listening to this and thinking, yeah, that's nice, but these are all pre-written, pre-planned stories. What can I do when I have no idea what's going to happen next? It's tempting to think up a cool story arc for your character from start to finish, but we know that our character's goals will change over the course of a campaign and potentially over the course of a single session. An example from one of my own games of a character who's changed a lot over the course of a campaign is Virga Esquiamona, half Air Ganassi. Used to be a cleric, is now a monk. At the beginning of this D&D campaign, I had no idea that my character would be changing their class and would be changing their entire outlook on life. All I had was a list of goals to begin with. Ahead of the first game, I sent them to Kat, my lovely and only occasionally evil game master. From there, she did a wonderful job of giving me opportunities to see where Virga would go in any situation. She was given tough choices, she was given ultimatums. She decided to turn her back on her former god entirely and start anew, because that god wanted her to kill in their name, and that was a line for her that she just would not cross. The character now is very different to where she started, and over the course of 30 sessions or so, she's had multiple small arcs, but this large overarching change in her personality and change in who she is, it's only just coming to emerge now that the campaign is wrapping up. I can't wait to see how her story ends and how, if maybe, we actually win the day in the grand arc of the campaign. The challenge here is to hold your ideas for where the story could go loosely. If we start demanding where the story should go, well, then we're looking for trouble. Instead of thinking about the grand sweep of a story arc, we should be focusing on the suffix, the little end of the word ing. It's really important. Your character might not achieve their goal in a single session, even of course a campaign, but they're trying. They're trying. By zeroing in on this one moment in time, this single point of what your character is doing in a scene, we can make sure we avoid the overthinking and overplanning trap. Another thing which you could see as a problem, but I see as a fantastic chance for improvisation, is that we're playing around a table with other creative people. Unless you're playing the edgy loner, well, the other characters should influence yours, and likewise your character can influence theirs. This means that the full story of what your character will become will only be clear when you look back at it at the end of the game, or when your edgy loner dies embarrassingly because they didn't take anyone with them. You might think that your character is at a low point, but actually the GM's scheming means they have so much further to fall. The challenge is to be aware of these arcs that you're creating, But to avoid going, oh yes, this looks like a low point to me, or an inciting incident, just what my character needs to develop. Instead, just roll with it and see where the story will take you. If you're curious about this approach to play and thinking story first is something you want to get into, I recommend this video here. From a player's perspective, what you can do to put the story at the forefront for your characters. If you're a GM, I've got a video right here for you. It's the fundamentals on what we can do to manage all these player stories, to weave everything together to make incredible games. I'll see you there, where we can be storytellers, together with our friends.